Hey there, I'm Gray Estrada, Chinese medicine lifestylist, face reader, podcaster, educator, and artist. This is a quick crash course in face reading. So what is face reading? It's one of the numerous classical branches of traditional Chinese medicine. The two branches that are known the best in the West are acupuncture and herbalism. Here are some key ideas. 1. Form and function relate. A tiger's teeth and stripes point to a carnivorous diet and camouflaging with its environment. A monkey's long limbs and a light body point to agility while moving through the trees. Because humans are a part of nature, the same rules apply for us. Variations in our facial features points to aptitudes, talents, personality traits, and aspects of our physical and mental health. 2. Facial color and appearance relate to health. When someone has jaundice, their skin and eyes turn yellow. When people don't get enough sleep, they get dark under the eyes. Chinese medicine stipulates the colors on the face are indicative of various organ functions and is considerably more complex and nuanced than what's understood in Western medicine. 3. We all instinctively face read. Look at these photos and tell me which person you think is the ex-Navy SEAL and martial arts expert. Have a guess yet? If you're like 95% of the people I show this to in my courses, then you pick this man, Jocko Willink, who is indeed an ex-Navy SEAL and black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The question is, why did you pick him? Because people's bone structure, muscle tone, coloring, wrinkles, and facial shapes all clue us into people's dispositions. Face reading is practical, and it's a skill that can be and should be developed. 4. Face reading is a form of profiling. The FBI and forensic scientists analyze handwriting, known as graphology, to assess and capture criminals because people's handwriting points to personality traits. Law enforcement and psychologists read body language to figure out if someone is lying or telling the truth. Face reading is simply another way to assess our personality, emotions, and experience. 5. Face reading is about pattern recognition. Chinese culture was excellent at documenting patterns observed in life and nature. These observations were recorded and passed down through hundreds of generations. Fast forward to modern times, and the Chinese have accumulated thousands of years of fascinating data relevant to the open-minded and modern human. It can't predict one's future, but does aim to identify rhythms and patterns in your personality that support your intrinsic nature and optimize the direction you take your life. 6. Face reading is relative, not absolute. It is not psychic fortune-telling. It's not about strict, definitive answers about people and their experiences. Acknowledging this keeps face reading humble and realistic. It's about assessing one's features in relation to priorly documented data and attempting to find relative patterns that can support the complexity of a person's aptitudes and experience. Face reading is indeed fallible, but that doesn't make it irrelevant. 7. Public persona and interpersonal nature. Chinese medicine relies heavily on yin-yang theory, which in a nutshell is the theory of polarities and opposition. Some examples are birth and death, men and women, night and day, hot and cold, expansion and contraction. This means the left and right sides of the body are said to carry their own polarity. In the context of face reading, the right side of someone's face relates to their public persona or extroverted nature, while the left side relates to their interpersonal nature or introverted nature. Terms and definitions: Jing, Qi, and Shen. These are known as the three treasures in Chinese medicine. It's said that if you guard these well, it ensures a life of health, longevity, and emotional resiliency. Jing relates to our genetic expression, bone structure, stature, how well we age, sexual vitality, and the talents we inherit. Qi relates to the energy we yield from the quality of our breathing, eating, feeling, thinking, and sleeping. Qi is not a mystical energy that allows telepathy or telekinesis. The closest and most modern definition of Qi is bioelectricity. Shen relates to the consciousness, anima, and personality of a person that can be seen, felt, and experienced, but not quantified. Mountains and rivers. This is a lens within face reading where we think of the face as a geography or landform. The areas with bony protrusions are mountains, and the areas containing moisture are seen as rivers. The mountains are the forehead, nose, cheekbones, jaw, and chin. The rivers are the eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. Assessing the mountains and rivers of a face points to a person's most ideal geography to live in. The 5 elements. Fire, earth, metal, water, and wood are seen as 5 phases or rhythms in the natural world that mankind has been dependent upon since the beginning. They are seen as non-self-aware personalities and/or the emotions of planet Earth. Because we're an extension of the natural world, these rhythms can be found in us in relation to our organs, emotions, activities, and facial features, amongst other things. Some people carry more of certain elements than others, but we all carry some of each. Enjoy the face reading. Welcome back, you guys, to another edition of the face reading series. Today I have got Keanu Reeves. So if you guys are new to the channel, welcome. My name is Gray Estrada. I'm a Chinese medicine lifestylist, and part of what I do is face reading. So I work with my clients from this classical branch where I look at people's faces and then build out their lifestyle rhythms and their guidance based off of your facial features. So the idea is that your facial features point to personality traits, aptitudes, strengths, and if you can lean into those, that's great. That's what you want, and it makes life easier, and we can navigate our life terrain a little better. So today we're going to be looking at Keanu Reeves, like I said. So to all the ladies out there, you're very welcome for face reading Keanu Reeves. There were a lot of ladies that asked me to work his face and to probe into him a little bit. So as we always do, we're going to start with the Jing, Qi, and Shen layers of Keanu Reeves. Now, when we look at his Jing, his constitutional essence, it's quite good. And the reason I say this, is one of the telltale signs for Jing is how well you age. And when we look at Keanu Reeves, he's up there. There are a number of other celebrities that age really well. Tom Cruise is one. Oprah is one. Jennifer Lopez is one. These are people that I've read also, but Keanu Reeves is aging very well. I think he's 55 at this point, and the guy is essentially stuck in time, which for a lot of us is very frustrating, right? Because the guy is just aging incredibly well. So it's a good sign of Jing. Now his Qi, overall, I would say is pretty good. He doesn't have any overt blemishes or the lines on the face that point to lifestyle depletion or poor diet. He lives a pretty moderate and even-tempered life, it looks like. So part of that is his good Jing. Part of that is I think he takes care of himself. I do believe he still smokes. Maybe he's quit. That's not so great. We'll talk about that when we get to lifestyle guidance. But overall, his Qi is good. The state of his organs, he looks healthy, but he is a little bit a little blood deficiency, which is very common for people as we age and probably for celebrities because their lifestyles are so busy and so hectic. So we'll talk about that stuff and how to remedy that when we get into the 5 elements and the lifestyle guidance piece. Now his Shen, the spirit, the countenance of the face. So when we look at someone's Shen and how the light beams out of the face in the context of face reading, this is pretty interesting because like Jennifer Lopez, who I've read also, Keanu Reeves has quite a bit of seductive peach luck. When we look at seductive peach luck, there are 5 primary types of peach luck, and the peach refers to being a good fortune fruit or a good luck fruit in Chinese culture. But when we talk about the peach luck, the energy that comes out of a face, there's different types of luck that we can have. One doesn't necessarily supersede the other, but different types of luck will come out of people's faces differently. So some people will carry multiple types of luck. Some person will carry one or just sections or portions of one. So in the end, he's got seductive peach luck. And as I said with Jennifer Lopez, that doesn't mean inherently seductive and sexual. That doesn't mean that the person is always seducing the people around them. What that means is there's a natural allure to the person's gaze. So the seductive peach luck is elementally aligned with the water element. So there's a certain amount of depth and knowing in the gaze. And also the thing about people with seductive peach luck is that typically we want to know more about them. There's something about the face and the gaze that makes us want to probe into them more. There's something mysterious about them. And Keanu Reeves definitely has this in spades. He's got it more than most celebrities. And it's really interesting because if you watch him in interviews, when people are asking him questions and they're doing their thing and they're going through and talking to him, he is excuse me, you guys. Spring is afoot, so I've got a little bit of that nasal congestion and allergies going on. But when he's in an interview and people are talking to him, one of the things you see right away is that he has no trouble putting up that shield and just being like, no. Simple one-word answers. He'll shut down, and he has that ability, and that's very true with seductive peach luck. People want to probe and ask questions, and the person can essentially put that wall up and say, no, I'm not going to answer that, or I'm not going to go into that. But there's something about them that makes us want to grab. And Keanu Reeves has that. His look, his gaze is definitely one of mystery. And when we get into the 5 elements, we're going to talk about the element that actually comes out of his gaze because he has it pretty strong as well. Now, when we look at his prominent features, oh, I'm sorry, I missed one thing in my notes here. Let me go back. The thing that I'm seeing with his face, okay, in terms of the length of his face, which is part of the Jing, and this will go into the 5 elements, but I wanted to mention it now before I forgot, is he's likely a good listener. That's one of the things when you have this face and you have that stoic energy that comes out, the person likely listens well. And one of the benefits of the Seductive Peach Luck is that they navigate despair well. And when we look at Keanu Reeves' life, he's definitely had some despair. His face is sort of built to designed to handle hardship better than other people. And more specifically, when they handle it, they're able to deliver those gems. Jennifer Lopez also has this look. So if we look at his life, just a couple key points. I know he lost, I believe when he was 37 or 38, very unfortunately had a stillborn that was at about 8 months, almost to full term. And they lost the baby. And then the woman that he was going to have the baby with, the grief was so much they ended up splitting. And then I believe a month later, she died in a car accident. Really brutal, really sad, really tragic. And with how Keanu Reeves navigated that terrain was pretty impressive to see him go through it. I mean, he had tremendous amounts of depression and grief, but his face, his wrinkles have said that he's actually integrated incredibly well. But the man has seen some very real hardships and very real tragedy in his life. So in terms of the prominent features, very interestingly, when you look at Keanu Reeves, the two things that leap out the most are his eyes and his mouth. His nose is good. It's a healthy, strong nose, but it doesn't leap out the way his eyes do. His eyes definitely have a penetrating gaze, and they catch first, and then a close second is the mouth. And so when we see these features that pop out right away, we want to pay attention to these because they mean something. The features that leap first sort of set the energetic tone for the interaction and the lifestyle of the person. You want to notice those things when they come out of the face and say, okay, that person's got really strong eyes and a strong mouth, which means they're going to have to lean on these things. And when we see the eyes, all right, we'll talk about this in the 5 elements to a degree, but he also has that direct look that he has when he looks at a person and his gaze is very penetrating. That is a wood element feature. That's a wood element energy that's very direct. It's the general. It's the person who penetrates forward. So he has that, and he also has this water piece, this sort of watery, deep knowing and mystery, the allure, right? Going into the depths. We want to dive in, know more about him. So that's all the pieces we're seeing, water and wood. Now, his mouth, very earthy, which is a full, plump mouth, which means that Keanu Reeves is going to need, for one, at an interpersonal level with relationships, he's going to need, most definitely, sweet and loving and tender people in his life. He's going to need the creature comforts. Keanu Reeves is going to need comfortable things in his life. He's going to like things of the senses. These are the things that his mouth sort of, predisposes him towards. But especially in romantic partnerships, when someone has a full mouth, they're going to need physical affection. They need that sweet, loving tenderness. We all need that. But like I said, some people just need it more than others for them to really, be in alignment and be in stride with what they're doing. So that's the piece that I see with him in terms of the prominent features on his face. And we'll go more into what those mean. But the length of his face, that wood, that's a wood element feature. So that's sort of long and narrow. If we think of a tree, right, that it's narrow this way and tall this way. There's the shape that goes with the 5 element cycle for wood is rectangle. So it's a rectangular shape. And if we were to draw a line from the top of a tree down to its stump, it's basically you could put a long rectangle is what a tree. That's the shape that the tree most aligns with, is just that rectangular energy, right? Tall verticality is what I'm getting at. So with all of that being said, when we look at his interpersonal nature and his public persona, this is definitely interesting because I didn't see this coming. This actually took me by surprise. But very true to form, if you look at his public persona and his interpersonal nature, the public persona side looks a little bit more like the Keanu Reeves that we know. It's the one, which is the picture on the left for you guys watching. That is his public persona. And that's what more looks like the Keanu that we know. So his features are a little bit broader. He's got a slightly narrower chin, but his eyes and his disposition of the face is a little bit more open and inviting. And so when we see this, very common with actors, that public persona side sometimes is a little bit more dominant and what we would say is more welcoming, because that's part of the allure. It's part of why they're good in the Hollywood scene, is that the public persona is open, at least appears to be. Now, when we look at his interpersonal side, he's got considerably closer set eyes. He looks more critical. His neck is actually thicker, and his face collectively is wider, but the features themselves are a little tighter and a little more wood-like. So we see this in between the eyes and the nose and the mouth. This area right here is actually, in the interpersonal nature, is tighter. When the features kind of cram like this, We see the proclivity for the person to be a little more hypercritical towards partners. They're going to be more detail oriented. They're going to have their mind penetrating a little bit more. They're a little bit more critical and beeline focus in their dealings with people, situations. And so by looking at his face, I would guess that Keanu Reeves probably has a little bit more difficulty in interpersonal relationships, given these tight features that sort of pack in the central line of the face. So when we see this, the interpersonal, it's not even unlucky, but what that means is people are going to see this, I would say, a better looking public persona that's a little more broad and a little more open, where the forehead and the space between the eyes is more open, that intuitive feeling to latch on to him and to talk to him. And when they get to know him, they're going to meet this person on the inside who's a little more critical, who's a little more withdrawn, who's a little bit more of a loner. So when we see this narrowness of the face, especially in the interpersonal side, this is people who thrive on solitude. They need time alone to navigate and go through life. So when we see this, I would say that Keanu Reeves is likely the type of person who thrives on solitude and really needs it for his elemental constitution, how he works and how he moves. So those are the big things that I see with him, and his interpersonal nature also with those tighter features, a little more stubborn than you would think. So probably very welcoming and nice in the day-to-day scene with people and interviews, but maybe a little more stubborn when you get to know him one-on-one. Now, the 5 elements, like I said, this long face, very much a wood feature. Now his gaze, the energy that comes out is a mixture of water and wood. Water is that depth of knowing, that mystery, that allure, that seductive quality that makes us want to go into Keanu Reeves and probe him a little bit. And I think also it's very true, in the traditional sense, the word seductive, a lot of women find Keanu Reeves just a stud. They love him. There's something about him that they're very drawn to. Jason Momoa also has some of that seductive peach luck, which is that mystery, watery allure. There's something dark and kind of hidden, those shadowy eyes. His eyes don't have that as much, but there's definitely a piece in there where he's got that water and wood gaze that comes out. Now, the earth mouth, like I said, full features. That's really good to note, and it's a strong feature on his face, which means, again, he's going to need the earth lifestyle. Good food, good hangouts, good people, sweet, loving tenderness. All those things are definitely earth-related. Now, the element that he's weak in is fire. He actually doesn't have a ton of fire. So when you look at Keanu Reeves' smile, when he grins, there's something where the eyes don't light up as much as I would like. This doesn't make him bad. This doesn't make him wrong or pathological. There's nothing wrong with him. But what that means is it's not his strongest element. So when a person smiles, they light up and their face just glows. His doesn't. And that's okay. He's got a different type of luck. He's got a different rhythm that he runs. But the thing that I want to draw your attention to is to look at this, and that when you look at his smile, the eyes don't light up. There's not a brightness that comes out. There's almost sort of a dull affect. In some pictures, it's almost kind of nerdy. It's a little awkward looking. And when you see that in the Shen, when someone smiles, and there's a little bit of that awkwardness where the smile looks, even if they're not trying to be contrived, but if the smile looks a little contrived, like it's just not completely natural, this is likely someone who actually may feel awkward in their own skin. That little bit of tension in the Shen, that tension in the light and the smile will make the person in their interpersonal dealings feel a little awkward, a little bit loner, a little bit outside the box, a little bit out of place. And that would be my read from looking at his elemental features, that the fire is deficient. And when that's deficient, we'll talk about that in the lifestyle guidance on how to remedy that. And because when we're looking at our elemental breakdown, we want to identify the features that are most prominent and the elemental proclivities that we have. If we're strong in any of the 5 elements, you have to lean into those to navigate life well, because that's what you are. But you also have to shore up your weakest element. And fire would be Keanu Reeves. He needs to work on his fire and keep that element afloat and keep it lit so that he stays in balance with his life. Now, in terms of his mountains and rivers, when we look at where would Keanu Reeves live? So it's very easy. The place that I would recommend to Keanu Reeves would be most definitely a redwood forest, a place that has a lot of solitude, quiet, but if you think about the shape of his face, this long, pointy, sort of narrow, rectangular energy that his face has, that longness, that is the tree trunk, right? That is the shape and the energy of wood, tall verticality. So for him, his face is definitely sort of like a redwood, somewhere where he could live quietly, a place where he could have a house in the redwoods or near the redwoods, where he could easily access the forest and have that quiet solitude. So critically important for a guy like this. So I think when someone has a face like this, they have this deep, watery, and wood gaze, they have a tough time being in the hustle and bustle. Now, mind you, he lives in Hollywood. I think he lives in for a celebrity, a smaller framed house. I think it's 2 bedrooms. It's like $4 million mansion. It's still really nice, but it's small by celebrity standards. And this is what we're seeing with someone like this, that deep water energy doesn't need a lot of external glitz in the world. They're more preoccupied with how do they feel on the inside, what's happening at the core, what's happening in my, in my inner space. That's what I would see. That's what I'm seeing with Keanu Reeves when I look at him. So solitude and quiet are absolutely critical for him. He would need these things. He has a quiet face. There's something stoic about his face, and that's a type of luck, and that's really good. And if you look at the way he has interacted in interviews, if you look how he's interacted and how he's behaved in production. So if you read about him, incredibly generous, has a ton of money going towards charitable organizations. He set up his own foundations. He took pay cuts in the Matrix so that the special effects team would get greater pay. He has done things like this where he cuts his funds to allocate resources towards people that he thinks are deserving. And this is very true with wood people. There's a compassionate energy that comes out of the wood types, and also that deep, watery knowing. Someone like Keanu Reeves with this wood and water energy, they need depth of connection. They need depth in experience. They need depth of thought, and they need to feel depth between people. And water permeates. So if we think about what water does in soil, it permeates and just saturates the soil. And so Keanu Reeves, if you think about a production company or a movie set and all these people, when they're working together, think about how many people are involved and how that money has to be allocated, right? That money basically like seeps in and is distributed, sometimes very unequally. Obviously the actors get more, but that his ability to look around and say, hey, wait a minute, this water, this money water is saturating into everything. I don't need so much. I can allocate resources and move them. And that's someone who is abundant in water. If we look at the life themes that are associated with the water element, it's life's journey, career success, business, our destiny. And so someone who has a lot of water is oftentimes going to be generous. They're going to have that generosity of spirit, and maybe sometimes, like Keanu Reeves, if he has the means, which he does, to be generous with money. And he has been. And that's a really cool trait that he embodies and one that we see in water and wood people. Now, in terms of his lifestyle guidance for longevity, as I mentioned before, weak fire. So for Keanu Reeves, for him just to shore up the basic deficiency and just to stay on point where he doesn't get into a lull and depression and sadness, I would say he needs activity to stay afloat and to keep his life force circulating. So he does need social activity, even if it's difficult for him. He needs to be pulled out of, he needs to have his cage rattled. He needs to have people knock on his door and say, hey, come out. And he also has to volunteer himself to these social situations. He's got to get out. He's got to pursue joy. Because Keanu Reeves, when he smiles, especially as he's gotten older, he's gotten these nice smile lines, and they're starting to show more. But in his youth, and he doesn't have a ton of joy just beaming out of his face. And that may mean that, his default setting is a little more stoic, a little more introverted, and a little more quiet. But again, he's got to keep that energy moving. Now, there was just a quick side note, there was a meme going around for a long time when it was the sad Keanu picture, which I'm posting right here, where it was him sitting on a bench by himself quietly. And people were like, oh, Keanu's sad, and all these women were like, please, let me take care of him and marry him and have babies with him. And when you look at Keanu Reeves, I looked at that picture, especially after looking at his face, I was like, that's not sad Keanu, that is Keanu. That's very much a rhythm. Simple, quiet, alone. That's definitely how he runs to a degree. And because of that natural proclivity, the way his face is built, the way he's designed, that's actually something he needs. That's not something to pull him out of necessarily. He absolutely needs that. And in terms of lifestyle guidance, I would say, Keanu, homeboy, keep doing that. Keep staying in that space and leaning into that, because that's one of the ways that he charges his battery. Like, it's absolutely critical. So the other piece, the lifestyle piece, was I would encourage him, which I think he's done. And I think any person who has had the means, the financial means to establish charitable organizations, they've spent some time thinking, why? People need help. They want to do this. And so that's what I call depth in activity. That means he's pursuing things that have depth, they have meaning, and he's doing that really well. So true to form, people that have these features do this naturally, and he's living his Tao. He's riding the wave and naturally carving out his life current and his life path in a very good way. So I would say stay with those things. The introspective things that make you think, that give you awe and wonderment and fascination, were very critical for a guy like this. If we think of this elemental dynamic that he has, water and wood, water goes down and is deep and will permeate. Wood has strong roots and grows up. But they feed each other, right? That these are the two axes that we need when we think of it's kind of an up and down energy, vertical energy with water sinking and wood rising, and that sort of central pillar of uprightness, that righteousness he carries. And that's very true when people have a lot of water and wood. They're going to have this verticality and balance of depth, and also this very slow progression of growing up and out. And that's what we see with Keanu. He's got that vibe for sure, especially when you read into his life and whatnot. Now, like I said, I'm pretty sure he still smokes, which is, I'm not happy about. But people, oftentimes, one of the ways Chinese medicine looks at smoking is actually a deficiency in fire. Because if we think about it, what is fire? What is smoking? We're lighting fire, right? We're taking in hot smoke. So it's a fire activity in a sense. And oftentimes it's a way of the body saying it's wanting fire, quite literally. He's got fire and smoke and inhaling it. And so sometimes people who are deficient in fire will actually pursue smoking as a means to remedy their fire. But it comes at a cost. It's drying, it's hot, it's full of carcinogens. And so I would say what he would need anytime that we stop an addiction or an addictive thing that we are addicted to, we have to fill it with something else. And I would give him fire activities. So I would give him things like heat exposure, things like sauna, things where he's getting out into hot weather and sweating, social activity, physical exercise that makes him sweat, and also things like spicy foods. So things that are stimulating, that are going to give him that fire without something that's going to be, stressing out his body, because that's a big one with smoking. We don't really want to do that. Now, the last little kind of funny point to this that I want to mention outside of the lifestyle guidance is, you guys know that he got famous for Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And that character that he plays so well, where he's, the Bill and Ted, where he's like, whoa, totally, like, it's hilarious. I mean, it was great. First of all, I love that movie. But that, what we would call the stoner, the spacey person, is also the water element. That's the other side, right? The depth, the wise, deep knowing sage is like the positive side. And the other one is like the spacey stoner who's, Keanu. And even in The Matrix, it leaks out, I know Kung Fu. Like, he's got that stoner, slow vibe, and that's a water energy thing. And what's really interesting to note is that he played a role in his youth that was, something that came naturally to him. He's got that deep, watery, spacey energy if he wants to tap into it. It was a very natural shoe-in, and he had to be careful because he got kind of typecast as the stupid stoner, and he carved his way out of that. But just an interesting note that the wise sage and the stupid stoner, two sides of water energy. Water energy can definitely be spacey and just, lost in the water and like, dude, that's all water energy. So it's just kind of a cool note to look at him and see that, how his life has gone. So you guys, that's my read on Keanu Reeves. Again, you're welcome, ladies, for reading the very handsome and seductive Keanu Reeves. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys would like a face reading, please reach out to me at Omni Health and Lifestyle. And thanks for your time, as always.